"What do you know about search and rescue?" the townspeople said to the old mailman Tom. For 30 years, he'd walked the same route delivering letters, just an ordinary man who knew nothing about anything important. But on that winter day, when 8-year-old Emma went missing, when Tom found the child in 30 minutes that police had searched for 6 hours, everyone learned who he really was. And those footprints they found in the frozen forest floor would reveal the secret Tom Hendricks had hidden for 50 years. Welcome to Hidden Heroes. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. The town of Millfield, Vermont, nestled in the heart of Green Hills, population 1,200, was a small community where everyone knew everyone, where secrets couldn't be kept long, but where people genuinely cared about each other. Tom Hendricks had been the mailman in this town for 30 years. Every morning at 7 a.m., he'd arrive at the post office distribution center, sort the mail, plan his route, and drive around town in his old blue Ford Transit van. He was 67 now, gray-haired, medium height, with slightly hunched shoulders, a man who spoke politely but distantly to everyone. The townspeople knew him as Mailman Tom. Children would politely call him Mr. Hendricks. Adults usually just called him Tom. He was so ordinary, so predictable, that people noticed his presence but never really saw him. Tom had never married. He lived alone in a small house in town, didn't even have a dog. He had minimal interaction with neighbors, just the necessary courtesies. He'd shop quietly at the market, pay his bills on time, never harm anyone. The townspeople thought they knew everything about him. Tom? He's just the mailman, never married, lives alone. Quiet, peaceful man, harmless. But they actually knew nothing about Tom Hendricks. They never questioned his past because they didn't think mailmen had pasts worth questioning. In Tom's house, there was a room no one had ever seen. Small, windowless. Inside were old maps, compasses, survival books, and a dusty military chest. And in that chest lay a past that no one had known for 50 years, that Tom never mentioned. Every evening, after finishing his route, Tom would quietly return home, prepare a simple dinner, watch the weather on TV, and go to bed early. Ordinary, predictable, reliable. For the other 1,199 people living in town, Tom Hendricks was exactly what he should be, invisible but indispensable. But none of them knew that Tom, before sleeping each night, would study his old maps, mentally mapping the town and surrounding forests. They didn't know that during every mail delivery route, Tom wasn't just delivering letters, he was also memorizing every inch of terrain, every trail, every hiding place. It was a cold Tuesday morning in January. In Vermont, the snow was 2 feet deep, temperature -5 degrees. Tom was at the post office at 7 a.m. as always, preparing his daily route when there was a knock at the door. Sarah Chen stood at the door, Emma's mother, the 8-year-old. Tears frozen on her cheeks, she was shivering, both from cold and fear. "Tom, Emma is missing," she cried out. "She's been gone since last night. We called police. Everyone's looking for her, but—" Tom put down the mail, turned to Sarah. "When did you last see her?" "Yesterday around 4 p.m. She came home from school, did her homework, then said she was going outside. She was going to build a snowman in the yard. I called her for dinner at 6, but she wasn't there. Ever since then—" Tom's face showed no change, calm, controlled. "What do the police say? They've been searching for 6 hours. They brought dogs but can't track in the snow. They flew drones but can't see anything in the forest." "Tom, my daughter is lost in the woods and it's so cold." Sarah's voice broke. Tom paused for a moment, looked out the window. At the forest. "Where is the police command center?" he asked. "At the fire station. But Tom, you're just the mail." "I know what I am," Tom said calmly, "but I've known every road in this town for 30 years. Maybe I can help." When Tom arrived at the Millfield fire station, he saw chaos. Inside were more than 20 volunteers, 8 police officers, 2 search and rescue specialists, and Sheriff Mike Donovan. Maps were spread on tables, radio traffic was heavy, everyone talking at once. Tom quietly entered, began waiting in a corner. No one paid him any attention. Sheriff Donovan was explaining the search plan. "We'll divide into groups. Each group will search a different sector. Dogs will follow main trails. Drone will sweep the north sector." Tom approached. "Sheriff, I can help." Donovan looked up, saw Tom. "Tom, what are you doing here? Emma Chen is missing. I want to help." One of the volunteers, local construction worker Frank Morrison, laughed. "Tom, you're a mailman. This requires professional search and rescue. I've known this area for 30 years, Tom said calmly. "Delivering mail isn't the same as searching for missing children in the forest," Morrison added. "Let the professionals handle it." Sheriff Donovan tried to be diplomatic. "Tom, we appreciate it, but this is dangerous work. You're just a mailman," Tom completed. "I understand." But Tom didn't leave. He stood in a corner listening to the search plans. He studied the map on the table, and he noticed something. "Sheriff," he said, "the child said she was going to build a snowman in the yard. What's the nearest open area from the Chen house?" Donovan looked at the map. "The meadow on the south side." "No," Tom said. "There's a smaller open area closer than that meadow, near the old coal mine entrance. Children go there because it's sloped, perfect for sledding." Morrison frowned. "What mine entrance?" "It's not on the map from the 1960s. It was closed, but the entrance is still there. Children know about it because—" "Tom," the sheriff said sharply, "we use professional maps. If the place you're talking about doesn't exist on them, we won't include it in the search." "Okay," Tom said. "I understand." Tom returned to the post office, but not to deliver mail. To get his old Jeep, 1985 model, four-wheel drive, solid vehicle. It had winter tires, snow chains ready. He stopped by his house, took a few things from that special room: old compass, topographic map, survival kit, and an old worn backpack. He looked at his watch. 2:30 p.m. 18 hours had passed since Emma went missing. Temperature -5 degrees, evening darkness approaching. If the child was outside, hypothermia risk was very high. Tom left town in his Jeep, headed toward the forest, but not on the main road, on an old forest road that only he knew about. 30 years ago, when he first started as mailman, Tom had explored this region step by step. Not just mail delivery routes, but every trail, every shortcut, every hidden path. Because old habits die hard, and Tom's old habits involved terrain reconnaissance. He drove the Jeep as far as he could, then began walking. The snow was deep, but Tom knew the right trail. He was reading footprints, which were animal, which human, which fresh, which old. After 15 minutes of walking, he found them. Small footprints, child's shoe, Emma's size. The tracks led toward the old mine entrance. Tom followed the tracks. Snow had covered them, but Tom's trained eye noticed hidden details: broken branch, disturbed snow surface, fabric fiber. The old mine entrance was a hole in the rocks, almost invisible. As Tom approached, he heard a weak voice. "Help me." Tom quickened his pace. At the mine entrance, Emma was standing, alive, conscious, but showing early signs of hypothermia, shivering, confusion, slow speech. "Emma," Tom said calmly, "I'm Tom, the mailman. Your mother is looking for you." "Mr. Tom?" Emma's eyes were foggy. "I'm lost, so cold." Tom pulled out his survival kit: heat blanket, hot water thermos, energy bars. He wrapped Emma in the blanket, gave her warm tea from the thermos. "Don't worry, you're safe now. I'm taking you home." But Emma was too weak to walk. Tom lifted her onto his back, began carefully walking back. Tom placed Emma in the Jeep, warmed up the car, and drove toward town center. He had no radio, cell phone didn't work in the forest, so he went directly to the hospital. When he arrived at Millfield Hospital, Sarah Chen was still at the command center. A nurse called her. "Mrs. Chen, your daughter has been found." Sarah ran to the hospital, hugged Emma, crying. "How did you find her? Where was she?" "At the old mine entrance," Tom said simply. "She has hypothermia symptoms, but not serious. She'll recover." Sheriff Donovan and the search team also came to the hospital. Everyone was amazed. "Tom," the sheriff said, "how did you find her so quickly? Even our dogs couldn't find her." "I followed her tracks," Tom said. "She had gone to the old mine entrance I told you." Morrison, the construction worker, still couldn't believe it. "You're a mailman, Tom. How do you know tracking?" Tom paused for a moment, then gave a simple answer. "When you walk the same route for 30 years, you start noticing things." But when the doctor examined Emma, he noticed a detail: Tom's rescue technique, survival knowledge, first aid for hypothermia. These weren't things an ordinary mailman should know. The revelation about Tom's ranger background didn't stay contained to Sheriff Donovan for long. That evening, the sheriff sat at his kitchen table, staring at his coffee cup, unable to shake what he'd discovered. "Mike, what's bothering you?" his wife Linda asked, noticing his distant expression. "You know Tom Hendricks, the mailman?" "Of course." "Quiet man, been delivering our mail for years. What about him? Sheriff Donovan chose his words carefully. He's not just a mailman, Linda. Today, I learned something that changes everything I thought I knew about him. The next day, Sheriff Donovan came to Tom's house, polite but curious. Tom, what you did yesterday was incredible, but frankly, I'm curious. Where does your survival knowledge come from? Tom was making coffee in the kitchen. I read books. I'm interested in nature. Tracking too from books? Yes. Tom, Donovan sat at the table. I haven't been in this job for 20 years for nothing. Professional search and rescue teams, K-9 units, technology, they all searched for 6 hours. You found her in 30 minutes. This can't be explained by ordinary reading knowledge. Tom looked at him with old, calm eyes. What are you trying to say, Sheriff? Who are you really, Tom? A long silence. Tom thought while sipping his coffee. Then he stood up. Come, let me show you something. Tom led the sheriff to that small room behind his house. When he opened the door, the sheriff's mouth fell open. The walls were covered with maps, not just Millfield, but all of Vermont, topographic details, trail routes, survival points, water sources, professional quality, military standard maps. An old military chest sat on the desk. Tom opened it. Inside were uniforms, medals, certificates, and on top, an old photograph, a much younger Tom in camouflage uniform with other soldiers. Writing below the photo, 75th Ranger Regiment, Search and Rescue Unit, 1978 to 1995. The sheriff read the certificate in his hands. Ranger School graduate, survival training instructor, search and rescue specialist. Tom, he said breathlessly, you were an Army Ranger? 17 years, Tom said calmly. Search and rescue specialist. I served in Vietnam, Grenada, Panama. Finding people. That was my real job. Why did you never tell anyone? Tom closed the chest, looked at his maps. Because I retired, Sheriff. That life is over. Now I'm just a mailman. But this knowledge, these skills, you could have helped the town so much. I tried to help. Yesterday. But they said you're just a mailman. They were right. I'm just a mailman now. The sheriff shook his head. Tom, if we had known you had these abilities, what would you have done? Made me search and rescue coordinator? Turned me into a hero? Given me to the media? Tom looked tired. I want a quiet life, Sheriff. That's why I never told anyone. But Emma matters, Tom said definitively. Children's lives always matter. That's why I helped. But that doesn't make me a soldier again. 3 weeks after the rescue, Emma Chen couldn't stop thinking about that day in the forest. She drew pictures at school, always the same scene, a small girl in the snow and a tall man with kind eyes finding her. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, noticed the recurring theme. Emma, tell me about your drawing. That's Mr. Tom saving me, Emma said proudly. He found me when everyone else couldn't. Mom says he used to be a special soldier. Mrs. Patterson studied the drawing more carefully. There was something remarkably detailed about how Emma had drawn the forest, the positioning, the sense of direction. It wasn't just a child's imagination. It reflected real memories of professional rescue technique. Frank Morrison couldn't sleep the night after learning about Tom's true background. He kept replaying the moment at the fire station when he dismissed Tom as just a mailman. The construction worker had spent his whole life judging people by their jobs, their appearances, their social status. The next morning, Frank drove to Tom's house before work. Tom was loading his mail truck, preparing for his route. Tom, got a minute? Tom looked up, surprised. Frank Morrison had never sought him out for conversation before. I need to apologize properly, Frank said, his voice heavy with regret. What I said at the fire station, about you being just a mailman, it wasn't right. Tom continued organizing his mail. You said what you saw, Frank. Nothing wrong with that, but there was everything wrong with it, Frank insisted. I judged you without knowing anything about who you really are. And because of my attitude, that little girl could have, but she didn't, Tom interrupted gently. She's safe. That's what matters that evening. Alone in his house, Tom sat in his hidden room surrounded by maps and memories. He pulled out a worn photograph from 1987, his Ranger unit after a successful rescue operation in Panama. 12 men, all young, all believing they were invincible. Only 4 of them were still alive today. Tom traced the faces with his finger, remembering names, voices, inside jokes. Martinez, who could navigate by stars alone. Johnson, who could track a mouse through a thunderstorm. Williams, who never left anyone behind. They'd all been brothers, bound by missions that required absolute trust and absolute skill. When Tom retired and became a mailman, he'd thought he was leaving that brotherhood behind forever. But yesterday, carrying Emma through the forest, he'd felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, the profound satisfaction of using his skills to save someone who truly needed saving. Of course, secrets can't be kept long. First, Sheriff Donovan told his wife. His wife told her best friend. She told her husband. Within a week, the whole town knew. Word spread through Millfield the way secrets always did in small towns, quietly but inevitably. By the end of the week, everyone knew that their unassuming mailman had been an Army Ranger. The reactions varied dramatically. Some people felt guilty for never showing Tom proper respect. Others were amazed that such an ordinary-seeming person had lived such an extraordinary life. A few were skeptical until Sheriff Donovan confirmed the story. At Murphy's Diner, the morning coffee crowd buzzed with speculation and wonder. 30 years he's been walking past my house, said elderly Mrs. Rodriguez. 30 years I've watched him deliver mail, and I never saw it. Saw what? Asked Joe Murphy, the diner owner. The way he moves. Now that I know, I can see it. He doesn't just walk, he scouts. He's always been watching, always been aware. We just didn't know what we were looking at. Reactions were mixed. Some respected Tom. We had a hero living among us for 30 years and didn't know. Some felt guilt, especially Frank Morrison. I looked down on the man as just a mailman. He saved that child. Some were just amazed. Tom Hendricks, that quiet, ordinary man? Tom remained unchanged. Every morning at 7 a.m. going to work, delivering his mail, returning home in the evening. But now people looked at him differently. The market cashier spoke more politely. Children called him Mr. Ranger. Adults stopped him to thank him. Tom was uncomfortable with this attention. A month later, Sheriff Donovan knocked on Tom's door again, but this time with an official offer. Tom, the town council wants to talk to you. About what? Emergency coordinator position, to manage search and rescue operations. Tom shook his head. I'm not interested. Tom, you're an expert at this. Our town needs you. Your town has needed a mailman for 30 years. I'm doing that. But, Sheriff, Tom spoke calmly but firmly, I left that life behind. Army Ranger Tom Hendricks died. Now there's only Mailman Tom. But fate had other plans. 2 months later, in March, another emergency occurred. This time the missing person was an elderly man with Alzheimer's, Robert Chen, Emma's grandfather. Robert had left the house in the morning and hadn't returned by evening. His family panicked and called police. This time the search was more complex. Robert's potential for confusion, risk of going the wrong direction, duration of being lost. Sheriff Donovan called Tom directly. Tom, we need your help. I'm just a mailman, Sheriff. Tom, Robert Chen is 74 years old, has Alzheimer's, and a snowstorm is approaching. We need your expertise. Tom hung up the phone. But 10 minutes later he was on the road in his old Jeep. This time it was easier. Due to Robert's mental condition, his movement patterns were predictable. Tom found him in 45 minutes under an old bridge, confused but safe. After the third rescue operation, Tom could no longer deny it. The town really did need him. Sarah Chen, Emma's mother, came to Tom's house. Tom, I have a request. Yes? Emma wants to meet you. She wants to talk to the person who saved her. Tom hesitated. I know, just a mailman. But to Emma, you're a hero. And doesn't a little girl have the right to meet her hero? When Emma came, she hugged Tom. Thank you, Mr. Tom, for saving me. You're welcome, Emma. You matter. Mom told me you were a soldier. Is that true? Tom knelt down, looked into Emma's eyes. I used to be. Now I'm a mailman. Being a mailman is important too, Emma said seriously. Letters are important, Tom smiled. For the first time in a long while, he really smiled. Tom finally found a balance. He continued his postal work because he really loved the job, but at the same time, he began working as a volunteer emergency coordinator for the town. He didn't take official salary. He didn't want official title. He just helped when needed. Search and rescue expert Tom Hendricks and mailman Tom Hendricks were the same person. He learned to be both. The townspeople also learned. They needed to show respect while not disturbing the old Tom. Frank Morrison came to apologize to Tom. Tom, I'm sorry for looking down on you. You didn't look down on me, Frank. You just saw what you could see. I wanted to appear that way. Why? Because sometimes people just need a mailman, not always a hero. Over time, Tom began teaching basic survival knowledge to some townspeople, to the Boy Scout group, local hunters, volunteer firefighters. "Suppose for a moment you're lost," he'd say. "You don't panic, you stop, think, plan." Children would listen to him mesmerized. "Mr. Tom, how many people did you save when you were a soldier?" "It's not about how many people you saved," Tom would say. "It's about being able to help when needed." And that was really true. Tom's Army Ranger past was impressive, but what really mattered was reliable, calm mailman Tom, who had brought townspeople their letters regularly for 30 years. A year later, Tom was still a mailman. Every morning at 7 a.m., he'd go to work, deliver mail, but now the townspeople no longer saw him, just as someone who brought letters. Emma Chen, after that winter day, would come out to see Tom every day. "Mr. Tom," she'd run and hug him. Tom would smile, give her a small candy, ask, "How are you today, Emma?" "I'm good, because you protect me." And Tom knew that saving this little girl's life was more valuable than all his ranger training. Now I ask you, are there people like Tom Hendricks around you? Hidden heroes who appear ordinary but have extraordinary pasts, who quietly serve the community? Share their stories in the comments. Let's remember them. Because at Hidden Heroes, we believe that real heroes aren't always visible. Sometimes they're just the person who brings your mail. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, share it, subscribe, and help these voices be heard. See you in the next video. And remember, sometimes the greatest heroes are those who look most ordinary.